Okay, so let's get started. My name is Renaud. As I was introduced, I will make it very short. So yes, social entrepreneur from Montreal, as you can hear from my accent. So I started E180, which is a social enterprise with the purpose of changing dramatically the way that human beings learn all over the world to make it more self-directed and more collaborative. And our flagship product is something called Braindate. So it's the idea to support human beings when they gather, to have them have a one-on-one knowledge-sharing conversation with each other on the basis of offers of knowledge. So maybe some of you experienced Braindate here at Publica. We were introduced to the event a bit late, so maybe you didn't hear about it, but if you did, I'm really happy that you were able to have hopefully a life-changing conversation with a peer here at Republica. And it's in the context of this work of doing brain dates that I met my dear friend Felix, who is the head of program at Falling Walls here in Berlin. So I'll just let him introduce himself quickly and his organization, and then I will just brief you on how we want to go about this half hour together.
Hi, I'm the lucky guy today because I'm the case example we're going to discuss here. So I think I'll walk out of here with some things to take home. My name is Felix. I work with the local NGO, the Falling Walls Foundation, and we are building platforms for the exchange between science and society, also for fostering exchange between science, business, culture, and society in general. And we build on the metaphor of the fall of the Berlin Wall, so it's really a local affair. We use that metaphor to ask the next big question, meaning which are the next walls to fall in science and society. So my main project is the Falling Walls Conference, which takes place on 9 November every year here in Berlin at the Radialsystem, and I'm the conference curator, you would say. And in the framework of that conference, we invite international experts and a mixed audience from all of the previously mentioned spheres to discuss the big challenges we face as a global society, meaning climate change, inequality issues, but also consequences of technological progress and what that means for us as societies. Another example I'd like to give is the Falling Walls Lab. That's another one of our projects. It's going to happen in 70 countries this year. So it's a globally expanding pitch competition for young scientists, entrepreneurs, innovators in the social sphere who also exchange across their disciplines within the network that is the Falling Walls Lab. And I think with that, I mean, we have various other projects that I can't explain here, but we have a huge network with a lot of knowledge in it. I think that's maybe the basis for a conversation.
Perfect, thank you so much. So briefly, I will just explain the way that we'll go about this half hour together, as I mentioned. So the idea of a public brain date, kollegiale Fallberatung.
Correct.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So that's the extent of my German so far. So we will actually ask you to participate, and the way that we will divide our time will be first to hear the description of a challenge that Felix has in terms of creating a place where his community can learn. And the case that we chose is something we believe that could be actually transferred in your communities, in your institution. So the purpose of it is to model a way of sharing knowledge, but also for you to get a case study in which you can actually apply the knowledge you'll gain here from each other in your own organization, schools, wherever you might be working. So Felix will start by explaining his challenge, then I will ask him clarification questions. If we have time, maybe we can, you can also ask clarification questions. Then Felix will shut up for about 15 minutes, so he won't have the right to speak, and I'm super strict about it. And we will be the consultant, so the peer consultant. I will share a bit of path for action or suggestions I might have for him to overcome his challenge, and I will open the mic to you guys if you can share examples in your life that could be interesting and support Felix in his challenge. Then Felix will have 5 minutes to debrief about his takeaways, and you will also have about 5-10 minutes to debrief on your takeaways for your organization and how you might implement some of the knowledge that we shared together today. So that's a half an hour well spent, I believe. So Felix, you have 5 minutes to present your challenge.
All right, so I'm gonna say the challenge now, and then I'm going to explain it. The question is, how can we transform our organization so that it becomes a learning hub for our community? As I explained initially, there is a large network that is specific to us. Your organization might have another large network, and what we all actually want to do is tap that network, right? For ourselves, for our organization, but also for making connections between people on the inside of the organization, on the outside. In our case, our mission is to break silos between disciplines, between people from different countries, from different spheres of society, and foster new forms of collaboration that lead to synergies, that lead to innovation. And this is what everyone's looking for right now, from an NGO to corporates. Everyone's trying to create this new synergies that we all think will deliver us new innovation. So the question here is, how do we do that? How do we connect people? How do we shape shared experiences that lead to cooperation? And the key, as we all might think, should be learning. And therefore my challenge is really about creating learning environments for our community that also involves us as an organization. What's the status quo? I think we regard ourselves as a dynamic learning organization. We're a team of 20 people, so it's still quite easy to have everyone walk all over the place and get new impulses, new ideas from different organizations, from other best practices. But what's the next level? How do we really tap what's in the community? How do we get people to exchange much more? We currently do conferences and meetings, so we are good at shaping the environments that are necessary for creative exchange, for open exchange, and for also serendipity, to have these chance encounters with people that everyone is so inspired about. And that's also something about the brain dates that I really love. But we want to take this to the next level in the future. So how do we move on from just having conferences and having, keynotes and one-on-ones, and involving really the community over a longer term?
Perfect. So I have a couple of questions to kind of dig deeper a little bit. So basically, what have you tried already at the conference, and it's outside of the conference, more in a year-long setup, that you felt worked, that you felt was a powerful learning experience?
Yeah, as I said, the learning environment that we provide as conference organizers or as meeting organizers is pretty much confined to a space and a time in the year. So that's when the conference happens, when everyone is there, everyone inspired, everyone's exchanging, everyone's meeting new people. New ideas are coming up quickly, and we're good at creating these encounters. So we've managed to create an environment that is creative, that is open, where people can let go of their professional roles. It's something in my experience is very important, probably can be transferred to other areas as well. Then what we also managed to do is create a context that is meaningful for this kind of exchange, namely the metaphor of the fall of the wall. So we say, which are your next walls to fall? That's what our speakers talk about. That's what the people discuss when they have their one-on-one. So we managed to connect everyone's individual challenge to the larger metaphor of breaking walls and really breaking through, having groundbreaking new ideas, and that also connects to positive effects for society. So these two things, shaping environments, having a purposeful learning environment, probably two of the things that we did and that worked well.
And what about anything you've been doing year-long that you felt was also compelling for your community?
I think that's something we're lacking and something that really didn't work out so well. We tried once to set up a learning or exchange platform, a social platform, that didn't work well because the dynamics weren't there. I think that's also a problem that many other organizations are facing in terms of, how to handle your alumni group that is growing and growing. And if you set up a social network that is just not alive, then you just have to let it die. So that's something we experienced.
And that's something we called with E180. We always talk about our 5 C's, which are the 5 C's of a vibrant community. And captivity. It's not like very sexy word. It sounds a bit not fun, but the captivity of being somewhere for 3 days and having this kind of expected behavior that you will learn new things and meet new people is a thing that is very conductive to learning, which you don't have on social media when people could at any time be exchanging knowledge together. They actually never really do because you have other things on your mind, and that behavior is actually not a habit, which is very different from a conference setting where the expected behavior is to be learning and sharing knowledge and meeting people.
Yeah, if I should add to that, I've spoken to many other conference curators internationally, and this is specific to us as conference people. We ask the question, what happens after they leave the conference venue? Everyone is inspired, the place is buzzing. You leave the venue and you dive back into your everyday life. You have to go to the office on the next day. How do you stay engaged with the questions you have been passionately discussing with another colleague just 2 hours ago? So that's like somewhat the holy grail of conference organizing in the future, would be my definition, combined with the question of impact. How do you measure the impact of such meetings, of such learning experiences?
And I think that in your challenge, when you say, how can we transform our organization so it becomes a learning hub for our community after the event, because I feel that it's something that you are able to achieve when people all are together. It's always a year-long, the kind of like, in French we say far from the heart, far from the eyes, far from the heart. So the idea that we're not together anymore, we don't think about each other that much anymore. So how can you kind of trigger a new response once people leave? And so you talk about the walls to break, and you know how much I love this analogy. Whose walls are they? How do you choose the walls that you will be addressing during the Falling Walls conference?
Yeah, it's a mixed set of formats. So partly we still use the good old keynote lecture format that where we define as an organization and us as curators which problems will be addressed. We invite some of the world's foremost experts on that field and ask them to really explain their passion for their work and where they see they're making the big changes. And that acts as a instruction basically for the people in the audience, for people in the community to tackle their own problems. So that is basically an agenda set by us. But then on the other hand, we experience that people bring their challenges to such meetings, and these are individual challenges that you're facing. And then we talked about this, if you just try to make these aware, what kind of challenges am I facing, what am I looking for at this conference, at this meeting, people are more aware of their learning experience.
Great. And do you feel that you pinpoint any practices that you feel are transformative for the participants? So any educational experience that you crafted or curated that you feel are kind of like at the heart of the transformation that your participants go through?
Yes, and it's again the good old keynote lectures, and that's why we keep it, and that's why TED is so successful. There's something in seeing a person that is really working on very big issues and seeing these people talk with their eyes glowing about their passion. It's contagious, and that's why it's transformative. So when I leave a session of 4 speakers, I see people walking out of the lecture hall and their eyes are glowing. I know that they have been transformed. There's something happening. The question remains, what happens afterwards, right? That's just for the moment. The other thing that is quite deeply transforming, and is something that we just recently added 2 years ago, is brain dating. So I was really lucky enough to meet these guys in Montreal, bring them to Berlin for our conference, and these one-on-one meetings that are curated in a very special atmosphere that encourage exchange, that open up people, you know, of all trades. We have academy presidents in their 70s brain dating with 20-year-old entrepreneurs from Singapore, and it's really a very creative mix, and this is something that touches people quite deeply and has the most long-lasting effect in our experience.
That's great. So I just realized that I planned all my thing thinking that I had 45 minutes, and we just have half an hour, and thank you for reminding me that right now. So we'll jump right now, I think, into the consulting so that we can also do the debrief after. So I will just share a couple of initial thoughts with you and everyone, and then I will open the mic so that you can share any ideas that you would have to help Felix overcome his challenge, which is how can we transform our organization so that it becomes a learning hub for a community, especially after they leave the premise of the Falling Walls conference. What I gathered listening to you and in many other conversations we've had, I deeply and we deeply believe at E1AD that the future of learning will be self-directed and experiential and collaborative. And to have a very strong self-directed learning experience, you need purpose, you need a clear intention. And I think as educators, which you are because you create an educational context for people to grow and flourish and learn, our main role as an educator is actually to help our participants, our community, to define that purpose for themselves and to define that intention for themselves, and then to create the ecosystem and the environment that will actually support them in their learning quest. And there's so much about that idea of a learning quest that is all about how can you stretch yourself to become the person that you need to be to overcome a meaningful challenge that you have. And that's, I think, the experiential part of what we've seen is very powerful, is how can you help your participants to define those meaningful learning intentions that are rooted in a challenge that is meaningful to them and that they want to overcome. And I think that we were talking about that a bit yesterday, but Falling Walls has an amazing, compelling, unique message. And this idea of the walls falling is something that probably only can be done in Berlin. And because of the historical context, it's a thing that people could come from all over the world to look for. It's the idea that not only sitting down in maybe a more of a passive, traditional way, listening to other people tackling their own walls, which is in itself very interesting and fascinating, and there's much to gain there. But if the first step that Felix and his team would take was to help the participants identify their own walls and the walls that they want to overcome in their personal life in terms of their personal growth or in any field that they might be active on, and that becomes their quest, that becomes the filter in which they will go through the learning experience that is being proposed by Falling Walls. I think that would be something extremely powerful and something very unique. And if we think about all the different conferences, they're all very unique and they're all rooted in a different city and a different field and a different story. But that story, I think, is definitely unique to Falling Walls. Oh. Thank you. Yeah, so that's one thing. And then what happens is that, and I got that inspiration from the Clinton Foundation. So when the Clinton Foundation had an event arm, whatever we think about anything of that, something they were doing that was pretty mind-blowing was that they were asking every single one of their participants at their conference to take a commitment to action. So it was the idea that when you come to one of the Clintons' events, when you leave, you have to publicly commit to an action that you will be taking within the next year or over the next couple of years. And the Clinton being the Clintons, they had the resources. Just 5 minutes? Oh, okay, it's still 10. Okay, perfect. I was like, well, time passes flying by. Yeah, so the idea basically would be that throughout the whole year, the Clinton Foundation would actually support they call them the members, so the participants to the conference, they would support their members in achieving their commitment to action by connecting them with resources, by connecting them with other members. So playing this kind of role of a learning concierge or a supporter to help their member to achieve that commitment to action. So then at that point, the conference becomes a place of, first of all, a kind of accountability, because you know that next year you will come back to this event and you will have to represent yourself to your own community saying, okay, did I do the work? First of all, did I succeed? Did I fail? And then what did I learn? So it was an amazing, and I think sometimes conferences, they're still looking for that, also that purpose. Like, why would people come back every year? Like, why would you go back every year to meet a community? And then that idea of being accountable and telling your community what is the path that you went through throughout the years is very powerful. It also becomes a place of celebration. So if you succeed, if you work together, it's a place of celebration of those commitment to actions and successes, and of course a place of learning again from each other and from maybe people that are tackling walls that are pretty massive, learning from their processes, because we all need processes and blueprints for our own walls to fall, and also basically just inspiration from other people that have been tackling really powerful walls. So yeah, and that's in our experience, it really addresses three main obstacles that people using a self-directed learning approach face. Again, the idea of accountability. When you want to learn something by yourself, sometimes the urgent versus important, urgent takes place, and then you forget how important that thing was to you. But when you have a community in which you're accountable, it helps you sometimes to actually keep a focus on something that is important yet not urgent. Again, the guideline in the process, sometimes when, we don't know what we don't know. So once you're tackling something that is a challenge that you've never tackled before, sometimes you just don't know where to start. So that idea of a community being a place of guidance, I think is extremely powerful in terms of processes and next steps and shining light on things that you don't even know you should know or don't even know exist. And again, the idea of resources. So that community also becomes a place of resources, either of other people who could support you with their knowledge and their experience, and or other ways to tackle a challenge. So I think there's something extremely powerful for Falling Walls if the conference becomes a place of defining what is the wall that I want to tackle or break down in the next year, and Falling Walls as a learning hub is a place of guidance, of support, of learning concierge throughout the year, connecting the members among themselves and providing that accountability. It can become an amazing, powerful experience that lasts not only throughout the year, but then that is celebrated at the end, at the conference itself. So that was a little piece of advice. I would love to hear a couple of comments, anything that you've been through, and this is really a moment for you to share your knowledge and to provide some ideas, some thoughts that you might have that could help to propel Felix further in his challenge. Thank you. And if you can just quickly present yourself, we have about 5 minutes, it's not long. Quickly introduce yourself and what you're working on so we can understand and where you're rooting your experience.
My name is Christian. I'm a student in London. I'm studying finance. I hope that what I'm going to say is what you guys are looking for. Well, as a finance student, and I have kind of found an interesting, let's say, mindset between how, let's say, people portray us, finance students, compared to, let's say, people within the arts industry. That tends to be a kind of very clear outline on this is how the finance people are, this is how the art students are, and there tends to be a kind of belief that if you start behaving like a finance student, you lose your arts aspect. And that's why I kind of thought that this is relevant for the Falling Wall in terms of it's all about skills. Skills that are in finance can be transferred into arts, and skills that are into arts can be transferred into finance. But I was just it's more of a question and a comment, I would say, because I believe that making the wall fall, or making those skills transfer, being exchanged in itself is good, but it's not really solving the issue, because the exchange of this knowledge is going to make an impact only if first we find why do people have that mindset? Why do people believe that arts and finance are totally different? And if you start behaving like a finance student, you lose your art and you have to behave in a specific way. Because only when we are able to specifically know the whys of the viewpoint of each of those groups, then we can transfer or exchange the knowledge in a way where both groups are going to actually, one, accept it and put it into practice. Because in finance, we have to be creative as well, because when you are doing bonds, all that stuff, you need to find ways to solve issues. And the same thing in art, you need to apply some structure and all that stuff. So I was just thinking in terms of how it's important to first recognize the issue, recognize the source of the problem before starting to transfer.
So I think
solutions.
it's super interesting what you're saying, because right away you're jumping into the process.
Yeah.
You know, like how can we help participants to first identify the whys behind their walls, which is super interesting. I would love to hear some more experience sharing. So Ian, maybe we can restate, you can speak once. Okay. Just restate the challenge, please.
Right, the challenge was how can we transform our organization into a learning hub for our community?
Yep. So any experience that you might have had that you think could propel Felix? Any even failures that you might have had? I'm patient. I have nothing else to say, so.
Hi, I'm Joachim. I work at the Goethe Institute. We're a worldwide organization, so maybe we have some structure in common there. I actually don't have the solution. I have the same problem. And we're trying, or one thought that I had, I think what you need, well, you get very motivated out of the conference, and you say, I want to do that. And then what you describe the next day, you have to answer 20 million emails, and you have to do the work that needs to be done. So I think we need to put resources, and we need to create a working space where this can follow up. So one of our ideas for a conference was to put resources in money, and by that to create a space where people can work on projects.
And when you say space, you mean like an actual physical space or a virtual space?
A virtual space, because everybody goes home, and maybe there will be meetings, might be online, might be presential, but one of our ideas was like have a pitch for projects at the end of the conference and try to get some funding. We need to organize that, put funding, and make people work on the 3 projects maybe we're voting for to have follow-up. And there, because if it's just the idea, if just the goal, where's the follow-up, where's the compromise?
And that's something I think that is well documented in terms of communities of practice. The idea that like, okay, we'll just create a group and then magically they will think about calling each other every week is just false. You need a facilitator. Like you need to create those spaces, or virtual or physical spaces, but you absolutely need, it's like a co-working space. There's oftentimes somebody at the desk that will, animate the live, that will create events, that will make sure that people talk to each other. And you actually need somebody like that also in a virtual space to make sure that people, they commit and they interact. It's super interesting. We had somebody there, I believe.
Actually, sorry. Maybe we can have the question afterwards later. Yeah, because
how much time do we have now?
It's over.
Oh, it's over.
Yeah,
Okay.
unfortunately, it's because we have another. Yeah,
Okay, so I'll just ask real quick, because
Okay.
it's part of the
Yeah.
process, just Felix to summarize your learnings.
Right. Thank you for the consulting, and thanks for your contributions and yours. My takeaways would be there are some pretty big things to tackle in terms of creating continuity of a learning experience, taking it beyond conference venues or classrooms. You can apply it to many different things, to meeting rooms and corporations. And to do that, using accountability, using the community in a much more intense sense, creating this kind of real peer group that will be responsible for you and your learning journey is an important thing. Fostering the idea of purpose. Why do we do this? Why do we have to do this together? And then I took away from you that it's really applicable to so many different fields, and we need to break silos all the time now. It's an ongoing trend from corporations to scientific institutions. Organizations are growing, everything is growing more complex. Breaking the silos is one of the essential things to still be innovative and move on and have new creative ideas. And then very practical idea from your side to have some sort of space for the afterglow after a conference, to debrief, to decide on how do we move on from here and to shape a continuity. So thanks to all of you. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, everyone.